rock star. And one of the most unique things about, and Richard and I, we've had a lot of fun talking about this in the past, is OCR is so unique because these athletes are wanting to race. They've got 10 or 12 races that they want to put on their schedule as an A race. And you look at the amount of time that it would take to get a quality taper in. Now you're talking about 60, 70, 80 days over the course of the year that technically they would need to be in taper mode when we have 1 to 2, maybe 3 really key A races the way we'd love it to be. So OCRs, and I understand why they want to race so much because, you're looking at sponsorships and it's a growing sport and there's money involved and a lot of them make a lot of their money because they live on the podium. So that's a unique thing that traditional sports it wasn't quite the case before OCR rolled around.
Well, the other consideration is that what I've learned, having worked in OCR for about 4 years now, is that there are a lot of athletes that are not really putting in the type of training that would even require a taper. And I'll tell them often, taper from what? I mean, you've not created enough overload over the course of the consecutive weeks that would really cause you to need to take a solid recovery period. Because, I mean, putting in 2 days here, day off, 2 days here, that's not creating enough overload for you to get to a situation where you need a taper. So the other consideration, again, going back to Rhea, I think she's a good model for this, is because she's got a history of putting in a lot of work for years. And even as a kid in gymnastics, her entire life has been about training. So her body is a little bit more conditioned to taking on more stress than someone that may be new to a sport. I may take somebody, and I'll ask them often, how many miles a week are you getting? And it's a rare occasion I have age groupers or mid-packers getting more than 20 miles a week. And when you're at that level, as opposed to somebody that's pulling down 60, 70 miles a week with some high intensity effort involved, they're going to really need to start taking a hard look at the time where they're going to take off. Otherwise, they're going to break down. So, and it's the irony too is, when we start talking about multiple races, is that right about the time that you're feeling your best is right about the time that people tend to get injured. You don't get hurt when you're in the middle of things. You get hurt when you really throw a lot of work into it. So that was an opportunity missed, the way I see it. That would have been the time to back off.
In the past, and Richard, you may have seen this happen before yourself. In the past, when I've worked with athletes that really struggled with allowing themselves to taper, one of the most unique things has happened when we had like a sickness or an illness creep in, or a minor injury. Let's say 10 days out, roughly 10, 12 days out. And so they had to they just themselves cam things way back, or that minor injury forced them to cam things way back. And let's say we're talking about an athlete that was used to putting a lot of time on feet. And that athlete that would fall on the scale that Richard just talked about, that had put in enough time to really need that adequate taper to get that benefit and that good recovery. So here they had the sickness or the illness or that minor injury. And guess what? 10, 12 days later on that Saturday, they had the race of their freaking life. And I call that they kind of got into a forced taper mode. It was more of a taper than we would have wanted. But now all of a sudden, we don't live right next to all of our athletes, and they're not in our track club. They're not on a college campus where we have control over them. So they're following the plan and not always following it to a science like you would like them to. But here they had this forced taper moment that really required them to come way back, and they just dropped the frickin' hammer and had the race of their life. So post-race, you talk to them about, well, let's talk about some of the things that happened there because of that little illness you had or that minor injury. So,
well, the term that's not been expressed yet, and I think it deems bringing to light, is the term is supercompensation. So that's the supercompensation model is about measuring the amount of stress and recovery that you take on. And fitness is about tearing down your body. And then recovery is about preparing you to do more work. And so that super compensation model is you dig yourself a bit of a hole from the efforts that you created for yourself, and you follow that work with a bit of recovery. And your body's response should be, if it's done and orchestrated properly, is you come back fitter than you were in the previous episode. And then so it's kind of a roller coaster. And what you want to do is progressively introduce more and more volume behind more and more adaptations. And so you can miss a window of opportunity by putting too much work in. Like Yancey suggested, go 12 days hard, have the race of your life, and then break down. And then he suggested maybe taking a little more taper than you needed. Well, that's an opportunity lost, because if he'd been paying attention to the way this was unfolding, you could get a handle on when the time would be most appropriate to take rest and how much rest it is that you require. And so looking at analytics allows you to kind of get a feedback for that. He was talking about heart rate variability. That's feedback that's suggesting to you that your body is responding or needs more time to recover. Heart rate variability has gotten to be quite a popular topic these days. Back in the day, we just looked at resting heart rate. When you woke up in the morning, when you woke up, your heart rate was 10 beats higher than it was in typical scenarios. You might want to take a hard look at how your body is responding. You might be coming down with a virus, or you're just a little bit overtrained, and that might call for scuttling a mission for the day. But at the end of the day, the conversation comes down to is there rationale or purpose behind a recovery or a taper? And to me, it's a necessary component for every athlete that's in any sport. If you're not taking a hard look and the requirements of your adaptation process, then what you're going to find is what's called maladaptation. You get hit in the head one day. What they say, Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face. It all seemed all well and good while you were just hammering the shit out of yourself until one day you got punched in the face. And then you realize, whether you liked it or not, you had to take some time off. And this manifests into some very serious problems for a lot of people. You get chronic fatigue syndrome. There's a lot of things that can put you out, not for a week or so, but potentially months. This happens a lot. I come from triathlon. You see these guys that press their body day in and day out and put in hundreds of miles every week leading up to an Ironman event. And then all of a sudden they come down with Epstein-Barr or chronic fatigue syndrome, and they're out. I mean, they're physiologically out of it. And it may take sometimes 6 months to recover from that type of a outcome.
Yes. So Charles, take what Richard just said there, and let's take where let's say somebody that comes from a very high level collegiate or professional running background, and now they're merging into OCR, and they're maybe they were used to putting 80 miles a week on their feet, and now you throw in the fact that we all know, the sport's been around long enough to know that Richard and I and you, Charles, understand that you've got to throw in an adequate amount of OCR specific strength training, or you take the best runner on the planet. If they're failing obstacles, they're up shit creek without a paddle. That's just the way it is. So now you've got that runner that in their mind, okay, I've got to get my time on feet in, and now we throw in all this OCR specific strength training that's needed. It's going to be, without talking black and white terms, we just know that there's going to be a level of stress they're putting on their body that was above and beyond what they were doing when they were running high level D1 track or professional track and field, cross country. So that's a really cool part of the sport where, we take things that we knew before OCR, and now we get to go back to the drawing board and see how our athletes deal with certain things. And, where we might be meshing in 15, 20 minutes of intense heavy carry work, climbing a hill on a treadmill or out on the side of the mountain, and then throwing a lot of upper body strength training where it's just going to be, the body's dealing with more stress than it was back in the day. And that's just it's a lot of fun to see how athletes deal with